some ribbon candy ornaments. We'll be making some ribbon candy ornaments. Here's some different ways you can put them together. I'm more fond of the wider ones than the skinnier ones. So we're going to make some ribbon candy ornaments. These are different versions, well, slightly different versions. If you wind it up real tight, from the side it looks more like ribbon candy, but I'm not a particular fan of the tighter bunching. Here's a little bit looser, and this one I added beads in between each folds to give it spacing. Here's a wider fold, which is actually I like more. Oops, those did not get cut. Well, there we go, got those better. And these ones all I did tassels on the ends, and you can see I did two-stranded chain stitch for the loop on that one, and this one I did just single. This one I brought down both strands to tie it off. This one was a single strand, so I added in a second color. This was a single strand, and I added in the other two colors. You can do it in any colors, but this is kind of the traditional, more common traditional ribbon candy colors. These are actually different chain stitch starts as well, but in the end, the original starts don't matter too much. The amount, how tight the folds are is what changes the design more. So we're going to go ahead. I'm going to start with white. I am using a H hook. I'm going to chain 35. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35. Now if you're doing your second row in the same color like this one is, then you're going to do another chain 2. If you're doing your second one in a different color, you're going to go ahead and switch colors now. So this is our chain we just did. This would be our second row. This is our chain we just did. This would be our second row. This one I'm going to do it more like this, so I'm going to keep the color. So your chain would be the start over here. So you're going to want the chain to be whatever color you want your second row to be. Your next two chains, I'm sorry, because that's your step up to the second row. So it's 1, 2, and then we're going to go back into that 35th chain because we're doing double crochet. And you're going to do 35 of these all the way across. And I forgot to count, but it's pretty much just one per chain. It'll be 35 all the way across. It will curl. Sometimes mine curl more than they should. Just the nature that is. This one I'm not going to use any beads on because I'm actually not liking how the beads are looking. I think I would need to get bigger beads, make it a little more noticeable. But what I used was the typical pony beads. And if you use these, you need to make approximately 3 knots to keep the bead in place. Otherwise, it will slide. And you can really adjust this pattern. You can use this pattern for pretty much any type of yarn. It's just going to change the sizing in the end. And you can use different hooks. It'll just change how loose or tight your stitches are and your sizing. So I'm choosing to pretty much do the reversal of this. So I'm going to do white on the outside and red on the inside. So kind of like how the two-tone color looks the most. Almost to the end of row 2. So by the time you get to the end of row 2, you'll have 35 double crochets. I'm going to take my tail and wrap it a little bit. So it saves me on some of my weaving my ends in. Since it's an ornament, you don't have to weave your ends in too much because ornaments don't typically get handled too much. Go ahead and cut the white off. If your ornament will get handled because you're doing it for like a toddler tree or an animal tree, then definitely weave your ends more. Alright, my next row is going to be red. So I'm going to switch that now. I'm going to rotate, bring up my original end for my first chain row, and my end I just cut from the white and my end from the red I'm starting, and this row will be half double crochet. So as I switched, I did create a chain in my red. As you can see, the white was pulling out a little too much, so I had to pull it a little tighter. And I'll go over this a couple times. And that'll be the extent of weaving the ends on this, just because it's an ornament. Blankets, hats, things that get shifted and messed with a lot, you definitely want to weave your ends in better, because they can work themselves out. So this row is half double crochet, and I forgot to start counting. There'll be 35 half double crochets in this row. I've gone over it a handful of times, so I'm just going to move my tails out so I can cut them later and continue on. This is a relatively easy pattern. You pretty much just need to know how to chain and double crochet, half double crochet, and single crochet. And you can do different variants. You can change up the stitches a little bit. You can change up the orders of the stitches. You can make your original chain stitch longer or shorter. Pretty much, ribbon candy is a long strip that just gets folded. So when you're making a crocheted ribbon candy ornament, you're just pretty much making a long strip and you're going to fold it up. Really can't go wrong. And you can make them in any color. I mean, traditionally they're red, white, green colors. A little bit of yellow. Well, it's kind of a yellow-green. Looking at an old picture right now of them. And a little bit of a pinkish color. But I've seen them in other colors. They seem kind of like themed. If you're doing a colored or themed colored or character themed tree, you want to do them or something, do them in different colors. You can add charms to hang on to them or whatever. And then I'm going to go ahead and cut this, switch back to my white. And because I need to step up into my double crochet, but I need to step up into the color of that row, my 2 chains will be white. And then I'm going to take both my red and white tails. I'm going to go over them a couple times. Try to pull them tighter. And start double crocheting. See, and I lost my red tail. There we go. Be careful when you're doing this, you don't accidentally pull in your tail instead of your working yarn. I've done that more times than I can count myself. I've actually done it on purpose sometimes, depending on what I was doing. It helps secure it, but with this, I wouldn't do it in this project. Alright, done over a couple times. I'm going to kick the tails out of my way and continue on double crocheting all the way down. Now you could make this your final row if you wanted. I'm not, because it doesn't quite give me that finished look. So I'm going to do 35 double crochets. And the red I've used on this is an older, it's an old stock red, so it does have a little more fluff to it than, I believe it's still a Red Heart brand because it did lose its sleeve. The white's Red Heart. But as you can see, the red has definitely a little more fluff to it than the white does, which I kind of like. But it's going to be 35 double crochets all the way across. Getting to the end of this row. Now, since this one, I did each row in its own color, I'm on this side now. So for this one, couldn't quite get it to mimic my original chain stitch that I like. So I went with single crochet here because it'd stand out. Since this is the same color, I like the cleaner edge that a slip stitch gets. But when you do it in a different color, it stands out differently. The stitch looks differently. When you do it in the same color, it just gives you a cleaner edge and you can't tell it. But if I were to point, it's harder to point out. See, it's the same color. But a slip stitch gives you the side stitch. So in a different color, it would stand out. In the same color, you're not going to notice it. So since I'm doing my last row in the same color, I'm going to slip stitch. If I was doing this last row in a different color, I would do a single crochet. So if you chose to do each row differently, I would do single crochet for this row and be 35 single crochets. Since I am doing this the same color as my double crochet row, I'm going to slip stitch it because it gives me a cleaner edge. But with a different color, you can see this thread right here. It's a line. It looks like a regular like sewing stitch. Would be a different color, would stand out. Actually, I can show you a long enough thread over here. If I was slip stitching in a different color, I'll show you real quick why you would not want to slip stitch in a different color. I mean, you might. It is a different design aspect. I just, not my preference. So while that doesn't look too bad, the back side is different. So if this could look the same on both sides, it'd be great, but you're going to have difference. When you fold it, one fold will look this side, the opposite side, since it weaves back and forth, will look this, and it will not look uniform. But it is your preference. You can also, if you wanted this stitch, take off some thread and use a needle and actually weave it back and forth and hand stitch it. You want to do probably at least double the length of your strip here of yarn. So you can still do a slip stitch in a different color. It's going to be noticeably different. But in the same color, it just gives you that cleaner edge. I like the cleaner edge in the slip stitch versus the edge that you get from a single crochet. But you can still do a single crochet in the same color as well. I find slip stitch works a little bit quicker sometimes. And it's just my personal preference. I tried a bunch of different edging, trying to get that chain mimic, and nothing I did today just liked that I like. So I just figured I'd stick with this, and maybe eventually down the road I'll change my mind again. Alright, this one will definitely have to be a weaved in edge, so I'm going to give myself a little length, pull it out. These ones went in enough, so I'm going to cut those. In the end, I only have one to weave in, which is great. Oops, my thing's falling off. There we go. I am not one of the people who really enjoys weaving in the tails. And see, that's where one of the tails popped out, but you can kind of work it out. But weaving the tails can help fix where sometimes the red came a little loose. Once I cut it, it snapped back a little bit, and that's okay. Yeah. Oops. I'm going to fix that real quick. I realized I was doing that. Trying to cover that red and created a mess. That's okay. Everyone makes mistakes sometimes. So let's bring bring that in here. I pull it off my needle. There we go. Snip. Did I snip something wrong? No. Alright. Kind of reminds me of baseball. So this is your strip. Now you can choose to eyeball it and do a tight weave, eyeball it, do a long weave, or you know the stitch count is 35, you can pick a number, divide it, and divide your segments up. But remember, if you're dividing, so this is 35, let's say you want to do 5 stitches, so 5, 5, 5, that's your fold. So every every fifth stitch, I didn't count, just pretend this is the fifth stitch, is your fold, which means every third stitch is where you're going to run your needle through. I am not going to count. I'm going to, I'll do white. First thing I do is I take my thread. Probably should have cut a little longer, and that's okay. And since I'm not doing beads, I'm going to tie one loop. It's roughly 3 fingers. If you're choosing to hang them a different way, or for some other project, you can change up how you're going to hook it, hang it. You can use ribbon. You can use the metal hangers. Oops, I hate when that happens. Paper clips. All right, let's try the folding method. All right, so I'm roughly, I like the wider fold. So I'm going to fold it roughly here, and that's pretty even. I'm sorry, I folded it off camera. Pretty even. So I'm going to eyeball the middle. Since I'm not using beads, I'm going to just, oops, my needle's too far up. Pull it down. Eyeball it here in the center where I'm going to run it through. Pull my thread through, go through my knot. This will tack your loop in place. Then I'm going to line up my edges and run it all the way down my center. And then take my finger so that way I can pull up whatever side has the tails. Alright, you can keep it tight like this, or before you tie it off, you can kind of fluff it. You can put the beads in between, you can trip knots in between. If you're going to do beads, this is the one I did, no, that's not the one I did the pony beads on. The pony beads I did in between every layer on this. It's kind of hard to tell. You're going to want to probably do bigger beads than that. I'm not going to do the little tassels on the bottom. Sorry, this is my cut threads. On this one, not particularly fond of that, just something different. So I'm going to kind of tie it into the bottom. Should I give myself enough fluff area first? You could also run it back up to the top to double secure it. That's what I did on other ones I've made in years past. But you want to make sure you're securing it some way. I'm going to run mine back up to the top after I secured it in the bottom, just to hide my tail. And then I'll cut my tail. And then I'll fluff it out. Kind of stick your fingers in the folds. You could starch this if you wanted. I I don't particularly do that myself. Some people use hairspray as well. But there you go. That actually, so far, I think is my favorite of the ones I made. I used a different pattern a couple years ago, and I don't know what I did with it, but